Hey guys, today we have a Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition review. Bulletstorm is a relentlessly unhinged game.
Shut the fuck up! Shitheads. Size don't matter. All in how you use it.
Sure, you go on believing that.
That sprays you with dubious jokes and a very entertaining gameplay. This FPS was developed by the same company that created a pretty popular painkiller back in the old good days of Pentium 3. And even though setting and plot is very different, the spirit of the studio is still visible, especially in the weapons department. Plot and setting. Somewhere in the futuristic future, you play as a former Special Forces soldier and Commander Grayson Hunt, who had a serious disagreements with his superiors and has gone rogue with his whole team. The whole story unfolds after your and your enemy's ships crash on the planet that is filled with some bloodthirsty psychopaths, mutants, and whatnot. As you can guess, you are not happy and want to relocate somewhere where cannibalism is less common than here, so you make your move and start carving through locals in attempt to find ways to escape. Story and writing. The whole story is filled with badass 80s guns and explosions kind of spirit. It's one of those cases where you just have to go with it and accept the fact that it's all just a reason to shoot, kick, butcher, run and destroy, etc. Because you don't have a choice if you want to tolerate this game. It features excessive amount of edgy jokes that come in three variants. One, they are actually funny, two, they are stereotypically brutishly military barrack style, or they give you a possibility for an ultimate and total facepalm from which you will never recover.
Your mom survived. Barely.
Does it fit the game though? Well, surprisingly it kind of does. That's because the story, jokes, and characters comments are part of a fast-paced game which doesn't allow you to reflect upon them for too long. Meaningful conversation and pauses in the gameplay are somewhat rare, so most of those wild jokes are told right before you get a room filled with local aggressive weirdos and a task to get rid of them in the most spectacular and brutal manner that you can come up with. So the fact that someone said something stupid before is quickly forgotten. Game has one of the most outrageously, cartoonishly wild villain that loves to behave as if he's not afraid to be cancelled anytime soon.
Weak bluff, you prancing geisha.
Have to insult a woman? Well, he will have a sex-related take, of course. Has to insult a Japanese guy. He's ready with all kind of comments about size and shapes of eyes and other organs. Have to abuse protagonists. Your mama insults are reporting for duty. He's so wild that it's silly, and it's so silly that it's actually hilarious, charismatic, and entertaining. Because there are no non-scripted interaction with world or characters, unhinged jokes just slide and don't affect your game as much as they could if this was a slower paced game with player choices and slow dialogues. It doesn't make story very good, but I just have to point out that despite its shortcomings, in-game it feels a lot less annoying than one might imagine from my description. Female character is a somewhat wasted potential as she was dumbed down to be cartoonishly badass, which is never good way to make an interesting character. There is a bit of dynamics, banter and flirt between protagonist and her, but military barrack kind of style with enforced brutish attitude makes things a bit too shallow. Our protagonist is using rather cliche, tough alcoholic seeking vengeance and redemption trope.
Attention, everybody, captain on deck.
Which doesn't feel particularly new or refreshing. The plot revolves around his mistakes, which sometimes works and creates more depth, and sometimes makes him look not that impressive. His story flaws are further exacerbated by writers who were obviously preparing story for the potential sequel and thus have affected character further just to facilitate story continuation. And maybe if there was an actual sequel, we could forgive stupidity on purpose, but since sequel was never created, we are left with kind of underwhelming story without a proper resolution. This being said, I had a feeling that this game was created with some love and care. So, despite criticism, this is not some kind of low effort BS story. It's just that genre, plans for sequel, and somewhat shallow characters don't quite make it to the level of truly decent stories. Gameplay. Now to the essence of the game and to redeeming part. Most of the gunplay in combat revolves around your ability to perform spectacular kills. Game refers to them as a skill shots. A skill shot is a condition you are trying to meet while performing a kill in order to get high score, and this score will be used as a currency for buying guns, upgrades and armor. So you really don't want to go around killing enemies with rifle body shots because this will only reward you with small amount of score points and will make it difficult to quickly upgrade weapons or even buy armor. Your goal is to do something spectacular and exquisite, like setting enemy on fire, kicking him into air, and shooting him into electric field, or shooting enemy in the balls or in the ass. And yes, game does distinguish between these two ways. Or you can kill them by shooting them in the ass while they are burning, or using a drill gun and then kicking the rotating drill deeper into the enemy's chest. You get the gist. There is a list of skill shots for different conditions, different guns, environmental hazards, and abilities. Completing them is not only fun and satisfying, it's a part of game's challenge. In the Full Clip Edition of the game, there is an overkill mode of the campaign, where you have all guns from the start, but you have to complete all the skill shots to unlock unlimited armor. Now to the actual combat. At the start of the campaign, game introduces you to your main abilities with some scripted cutscenes and tutorial-ish intro. At this point, you can shoot your basic rifle and you can kick. Kick comes in two variants, direct boot to the face kind of kick and a slide, which allows you to slide as a handy movement maneuver, but also will send enemies flying if you slide into them. Enemies who are sent flying with both types of these kicks are sent into slow motion flight, which allows you, for example, to repeatedly kick them into specific hazard or into one another, or just shoot them to the death while they are flying. Very soon you get a crucial part of your attack, electrical leash, which gives you ability to grab enemies and throw them into spikes, fire and whatnot. Another use case is to drag certain debris to clear paths for you and your team. This, however, is limited to situations where game actually has those scripted and prepared kind of debris that will be glowing and waiting for you. From time to time you will encounter so-called drop kit terminals where you can buy and upgrade weapons if you have enough score points. As you advance through the campaign and meet enemies and their weaponry, you unlock ability to get and upgrade those weapons for yourself. Upgrading is somewhat straightforward. You can upgrade carried ammo reserves and you can unlock and upgrade charges. Charges are expensive, limited, but very powerful rounds. Every weapon, including your leash, has its own variant of charge shot that may be more suited to specific situation. These charged shots or charged rounds can often eliminate multiple enemies with one shot. As for weapons, there are 7 of them. And occasionally you can get a minigun and use it till its battery runs out. Hopefully I conveyed the main idea. You get plenty of possibilities and ways to carve through enemies, choices are meaningful and there is a place for most of existing guns. There is a lot of interactivity in terms of your weaponry, environment and your other abilities, and they all make fun transition into each other. Now, a bit about enemies. Their variety is not particularly great on paper, but they cover most of the typical roles, and especially on higher difficulty require some planning on how to deal with their composition. Charging berserkers with melee weapons, snipers, riflemen, close combat, shotgunners, annoying psychos with flail guns, military special forces, wild and fast melee mutants, and mini bosses with either miniguns, cannons, or drill guns. Speaking of bosses, there is only one fight that can be considered as a typical boss fight in the sense of a big enemy with a HP bar in the center of a room. Most of the challenges come in the form of dealing with enemy compositions and their numbers, or with mini bosses. These guys aren't the brightest or the fastest, but they usually have a nasty weaponry, better armor, more HP, and they may have support of faster and more aggressive enemies. Your teammates are fortunately immortal, so you don't have to restart missions because of them, nor you have to babysit them, which is very liberating. Visuals. While it is a more or less old game originally, Full Clip Edition got a graphical remaster. It wasn't an ugly game before, but now it looks very appealing. It got that juicy style of colors and effects, and game's locations are fully utilizing graphics capabilities, both in sunny tropical settings with gorgeous landscapes and in gloomy undergrounds. Game knows when it can show something stunning, knows when it does what it does well, and uses it quite masterfully. The age shows in facial animations or in fire particle and such, but the overall impression is quite good. The art style fits pacing, and you aren't bored with the same visuals because of a very timely change in the locations. Audio. Game has pretty good sound effects, voiceovers, sometimes a bit overacting. Woman character tries way too hard to sound badass.
Such an idiot.
Main villain voiceover is tied to his cartoonishly deranged nature, and it fits character perfectly. Just remember that character is total psycho. Overall, game leaves pretty good impression in sound and voiceover department. Custom soundtracks might not be the most memorable, but there are several good tracks, and generally music feels natural and fitting. Controls. I played on keyboard and mouse. It was just fine. There is no vehicles or anything that could really stress test control scheme, so nothing to discuss here. The only exception was a case of a controlled, let's say, machinery, trying not to avoid spoilers here, which had a bit of targeting problems, but the whole phase is pretty short. Now to the game length. I have finished first normal campaign in some 9 hours without any haste and with some fooling around. Other users report times from 7 to 10 hours for campaign. Then there is an overkill mode which features same campaign but gives you all weapons and a goal to complete all weapons skill shots to unlock unlimited ammo. Hunting for some tricky skill shots may take some repetitive replays of certain chapters that have exclusive environmental hazards that are needed for those specific challenges. But all in all, if you play first campaign for the sake of story and then overkill mode for the sake of skill shots and just having some fun with unlocked guns, you are probably aiming at 14-19 hours maximum. Then you either go to harder difficulties if you haven't already, or complete eco challenges, high score grind on recycled maps where you run against timer and complete skill shots or fulfill different conditions. Overall, I would say that the game is certainly on the shorter side and it feels like it misses some extras. Now, who will like this game? If you love games with weapons variety and fun, gore-rich combat, if you love games stylized into over-the-top action movies, games that guide you through the world in a very linear fashion and switch from intense combat to scripted action and then back to combat, you have high chances of ending up liking Bulletstorm. It is a run around and do crazy stuff kind of shooter. There is no med packs, you just heal over time. There is no intricate military tactics here other than just do something horrible to your enemies kind of tactics. Cover does help and sometimes becomes crucial, but it's fairly basic, just hide behind a rock or a wall. It's not a boss fight shooter, more like clear the room, earn the score kind of thing. It's not all combat here. There are some campaign and world related activities like occasional climbing, some running from place to place. Typically, in a game itself, it doesn't feel like there are that many pauses in action due to running or getting through debris and such. But watching through my video recording, it's clear that even though game does feel fast paced, it's not a room after room full of combat. Rather than clear a room, run a bit, or get through debris, get couple of new rooms with enemies, get some scripted event, maybe a bit of story, rinse and repeat. Replayability. Due to the game's nature, its replayability for the sake of messing around is pretty good, and I do keep it installed even after beating it several times, because coming up with new ways to kill enemies is always fun, but you gotta ask yourself how much do you love replaying higher difficulties and high scoring, speed running for the sake of it, because content-wise, nothing is going to change compared to your first playthrough. Same enemies, same guns, same maps, same scripts. The game is completely on rails and ultra linear, so you will always see the same areas. Value to price. Game costs 37 euros normally, but goes under 4 euros on sale. I would say wait for a sale because, in my opinion, full price is a bit too much for this game's length and lack of extra games mode to replay it. And for $4 or 4 euros, it's just an incredibly good deal. Performance and stability. With full HD resolution and all settings on max, it ran perfectly smooth on my system, also never crashed. Wokeness, ideological infestation, ideological topics, and such. Now, if you're gonna be somewhat nitpicky, you probably will find the female character in this game slightly dubious and might get a feeling that there are some vibes of a strong female character there, in a bad sense of this term. However, it's probably worth pointing out that female badass in this game is done mostly in a style of older action movies, if you know what I mean. So it's not preachy, it's not modern, it's not like excessively in your face. It's more like over the top acting with old Mortal Kombat kind of vibes. You could probably tell that there were ideological influences in terms of unrealistic depiction of women's combat capabilities and such, but they were at least somewhat toned down compared to modern approach. It's just way too stylized to be as annoying as strong female characters in some modern games. And now my overall impression. Yes, it did feel way too short from the perspective of my first playthrough, but I certainly got a lot of fun out of it by replaying it from time to time simply for the sake of its fun gameplay. Despite its shortcomings in story department and some dubious dialogues, Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition is a very competent game. It clearly was a child of passion, it feels nice, it plays nice, and it's a good addition to your collection. That's it for today. Thank you for watching this video. I see you later.